Deeds of the First Crusade. By the late 11th century, Europe was gradually emerging from the long, dark ages following the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Kingdoms were stabilizing, the feudal system was becoming more defined, and the knightly class, warriors trained in combat, loyalty, and glory, was rapidly growing. Yet, in an already overcrowded Europe, with land tightly divided and internal warfare no longer glorious, knights found themselves with few opportunities to display their prowess. At that moment, a dramatic event in the East shook the Christian world. In 1071, at the Battle of Manzikert, the Byzantine Empire, Christianity's last stronghold in the East, suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of the Seljuk Turks, a rising Islamic power. Much of Anatolia, the empire's heartland, fell into enemy hands, and the complete collapse of Eastern Christendom became a real threat. Desperate, the Byzantine emperor sent a plea for help to the West, addressing Pope Urban II, the head of the Roman Catholic Church, who had long desired to expand his religious influence. Seizing the opportunity to both assert papal authority and redirect Europe's internal conflicts outward, Urban II convened the Council of Clermont in 1095. There, before thousands of clergy, nobles, and commoners, he delivered a stirring sermon calling for a great journey to liberate Jerusalem, the city where Jesus had preached and been crucified, from the hands of Muslim infidels. He promised full remission of sins to anyone who joined this holy war. The call spread like wildfire across Europe, and the cry, Deus vult, God wills it, echoed from churches, town squares, and villages. Beneath the religious fervor, however, lay countless worldly motivations. For many knights, the crusade was a golden opportunity to seek land, glory, and riches, things increasingly hard to obtain in fragmented, crowded Europe. For peasants and the poor, oppressed under feudalism, the crusade was a possible escape from poverty and bondage, a chance for a new life. Some went, believing they were fulfilling God's will in a righteous war. Others were driven by dreams of wealth and freedom. But whatever the reason, the movement swept across Europe with unprecedented zeal, marking the bloody, idealistic beginning of a new chapter in European history, the First Crusade. The Great Departure, from Clermont to Constantinople. The first wave, known as the People's Crusade, departed in early 1096, led by a wandering preacher named Peter the Hermit. With his fiery sermons about God's mission, Peter inspired thousands of people from all walks of life, most of whom had no military training or organization, to abandon everything and march east. They crossed the Rhine and wandered through Germany's forests and trails. But their fierce faith could not replace food, discipline, or tactics. Along the way, the group descended into chaos, looting, infighting, and massacring Jewish communities in several towns. By the time they reached Byzantine territory, they were little more than a starving, disorderly mob. They were ultimately annihilated by the Seljuks in Asia Minor. Still, that defeat did not extinguish the fire sweeping through Europe. Later that year, 4 better-organized armies, led by experienced knights, prepared for the real expedition. Among the nobles called by Urban II were Bohemond of Taranto, his nephew Tancred, Godfrey of Bouillon, a former opponent of the Pope, his brother Baldwin, Hugh of Vermandois, brother of the King of France, Robert Curthose, brother of the King of England, Stephen of Blois, Robert of Flanders, and others. No overall commander was appointed, a fact that would later cause much rivalry and distrust. Nonetheless, they converged on Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire, at the invitation of Emperor Alexios I, the very man who had first appealed for help, though now wary of the flood of Western warriors. In Constantinople, a fragile agreement was made. In exchange for military and logistical support, the Crusader lords were to return any formerly Byzantine territories recaptured from Muslim forces. Yet many, particularly Bohemond, already harbored ambitions of carving out their own kingdoms. After preparation, the Crusader armies crossed the Bosporus, setting foot in Asia Minor, where they would face desert heat, deadly enemies, disease, and internal strife. Blood on holy ground, from Nicaea to Antioch. After crossing the Bosporus, the Crusader forces entered Asia Minor, once Byzantine territory, now under Seljuk control. Harsh terrain, scorching weather, and supply shortages made the early days brutal. But the first real challenge came with the siege of Nicaea. A politically charged beginning. Nicaea was a vital Seljuk stronghold in Western Anatolia and had once been a secondary Byzantine capital. Reclaiming it held immense symbolic value. In May 1097, the Crusaders laid siege to the city. Despite repeated failed assaults, Byzantine agents secretly negotiated with the defenders and secured the city's surrender behind the Crusaders' backs. This deprived the Western Knights of plunder, one of their key motivations, and sowed resentment. Nicaea became the first reminder that the Crusade was also a story of conflicting Eastern and Western interests. Still, victory lifted morale and cleared the path into Anatolia's interior. Weeks after Nicaea, Bohemond's force was ambushed at Dorylaeum on July 1, 1097. The Seljuks attacked swiftly, using mobile cavalry and archery to devastating effect. The Crusader ranks broke under pressure. But just as defeat loomed, reinforcements under Godfrey and Raymond of Toulouse struck the Seljuk rear, turning the tide. The Seljuks retreated, leaving a battlefield soaked in blood. The battle showed that when united, the Crusaders could overcome even skilled Muslim horsemen. Still, the toll was heavy. Exhausted, the army pushed onward through thirst, hunger, and disease. Antioch, one of the most fortified cities in the region, blocked the path to Jerusalem. The siege began in October 1097. Unlike Nicaea, this time the Byzantines gave little support. Cut off from supplies, the Crusaders suffered through winter, famine, disease, and even cannibalism. Thousands died. Then came a dramatic twist. An Armenian officer betrayed the defenders, opening a gate to the Crusaders in June 1098. But just as they seized the city, Muslim reinforcements under Kerboga arrived, trapping the Crusaders inside Antioch. Despair set in. Then, a soldier named Peter Bartholomew claimed a divine vision showed him the location of the Holy Lance, the spear said to have pierced Christ's side. When it was found, morale surged. Inspired by renewed faith, the Crusaders launched a daring sortie, defeating Kerboga's larger force and securing Antioch. From the ruins, the crusade pushed onward. The March to Jerusalem, the final chapter of faith and fire. Following the miracle at Antioch, the Crusaders pressed on, exhausted, divided, but determined. Nearly 3 years of war had passed. From Antioch, they marched south through sun-scorched Syria and Palestine. By the time they neared Jerusalem in June 1099, only about 12,000 soldiers remained. Fewer than 1,500 were knights. Jerusalem, then held by the Fatimid Caliphate, rivals of the Seljuks, was well fortified with walls, deep moats, and a sizable garrison. The surrounding region was dry and barren, lacking food, water, or pasture for horses. The Crusaders camped on rocky hills, battling hunger and disease. The siege began on June 7, 1099. Lacking materials for siege engines, the Crusaders had to cut wood from afar and haul it under fire in searing heat. But they persevered, believing God guided them. On July 8, they held a religious procession around the city, imitating the Israelites' march in the Bible, singing, praying, and vowing not to leave until Jerusalem was theirs. By July 13 or 14, siege towers were ready. After 2 days of fierce assaults, they breached the northern wall near the gate of St. Stephen. On the morning of July 15, 1099, Crusader knights stormed the city. Jerusalem had fallen, but victory came not with mercy or chivalry, but with horrific bloodshed. A massacre ensued, unlike anything the city had ever seen. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, a temporary triumph. After the conquest, Crusader leaders vied for control. Bohemond returned to Antioch. Godfrey of Bouillon was chosen as defender of the Holy Sepulchre, refusing the title of king, claiming that only Christ could be king of Jerusalem. Under him, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was founded, paving the way for later Crusader states in the Levant. The First Crusade was a tragic and awe-inspiring chapter in human history, where faith, ambition, courage, and cruelty intertwined. It sparked centuries of conflict between East and West, Christianity and Islam, leaving scars in the memory of both civilizations. Jerusalem was liberated, but at the cost of countless lives, a ruined city, and a world steeped in hatred.
Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this content and found it interesting, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos.